When was the last time you had a single moment where you weren't worried about something? I'm not talking about just acting tough or hiding your pain behind a smile. I mean truly feeling light, present, and free. Most of us spend our lives in a waiting room, putting our happiness on hold. We tell ourselves that one day, when every problem is finally solved and everything is perfect, then we'll finally let ourselves feel at peace. But let's be honest, that perfect day never actually shows up. Buddhist teachings remind us that peace isn't some destination we reach in the future. It's not about fixing every little problem or controlling exactly what's coming next. Peace is actually already right here, in this very second, the moment we stop running, stop resisting, and simply come back to what's happening now. If you're tired of living inside your own head, if you want to let go of that constant worry and feel alive again, then these 7 lessons might be the gentle reminder your heart has been waiting for. Lesson 1. The present moment is the only safe place you'll ever find. One of the core truths in Buddhism is that real peace and real freedom only exist in the present. It sounds simple, right? But when this truth really sinks in, it changes your entire life. The past is gone. It only survives in your memory. The future hasn't arrived yet. It lives only in your imagination. Yet worry constantly pulls you away from the now, dragging you into a world of what-ifs. It creates fears out of nothing, paints worst-case scenarios, and convinces you that danger is nearby even when it's not. And because you keep replaying those fears on a loop, your body and emotions start to react as if they're true, even though in reality you are perfectly safe right here, right now. Worry makes you live in a future that doesn't exist, instead of experiencing the life that does. You're literally suffering through events that exist only in your mind. That's how powerful your thoughts can be. They can rob you of the peace that's already here. But the second you bring your awareness back to what is actually happening, your breath going in and out, the feeling of your feet on the ground, the sounds around you, something shifts. Your nervous system starts to calm down. Your chest feels lighter. Your thoughts slow down. Because the present moment isn't just an idea. It's a refuge. It's the only space where life is actually happening. Everything else is just noise. And here is the most important part. Worry cannot survive when you're truly present. It feeds on imagination, but it dies in reality. When you are fully grounded in the now, there is no room for fear about what hasn't happened yet. Your mind might still try to pull you back. It might whisper, "But what if tomorrow brings bad news?" But you can learn to gently talk back to it, saying, "I don't need to solve tomorrow right now. Right now I am safe. Right now I am breathing, and that is enough." With practice, this return to the present becomes easier. It becomes your anchor, your home, and your safest place to be. The more you return, the more you realize you were never supposed to live in fear of the future. You were always meant to live in the freedom of now. Lesson 2. Acceptance is not giving up. It's giving yourself permission to breathe. A lot of people mistake acceptance for weakness. We think that if we accept something painful, it means we've stopped trying, that we've failed, or that we're just giving up on change. But in Buddhism, acceptance has a very different meaning. It's not about being helpless. It's about releasing the heavy burden of trying to control everything around us. When you resist what life brings, whether it's a loss, a setback, or an unexpected problem, you create this inner tension, and that tension becomes suffering. The struggle doesn't actually come from the event itself, but from the way your mind keeps fighting against it. Acceptance means looking at reality honestly and saying, "Okay, this is what's happening right now." It doesn't mean you approve of it. It doesn't mean you don't care. It simply means you stop pretending it isn't real. You stop wasting your energy wishing things were different when at this moment they are not. When you do that, something inside you softens. You let go of that tight grip. You stop fighting the current, and you finally create space to breathe. Think about how much mental and emotional pain comes from that resistance. A relationship ends, and instead of grieving, we obsess over why it happened, how it could have been avoided, or if it can be fixed. We relive it over and over, as if we could rewrite the past by worrying hard enough. But we can't. And the more we resist what is, the more we suffer. Acceptance is the moment you stop arguing with reality and allow yourself to feel what you feel without judgment or shame. That's when the healing really begins. This doesn't mean you stop trying to grow or improve your situation. It just means you stop expecting life to match your plans perfectly in order for you to be at peace. You begin to realize that peace isn't the result of things going your way. Peace is what happens when you stop needing things to go your way. Acceptance creates space for clarity, for wise action, and for rest. It frees up the energy that was trapped in that endless cycle of frustration. In that space, you can move forward, not with anxiety, but with understanding. You no longer need to win against life. You just need to walk with it. Lesson 3. Not every thought deserves your attention or belief. The human mind is an amazing tool, but man, it can be noisy and overwhelming. Every single day, thousands of thoughts pass through your head. Some are useful, but many are just repetitive, and far too many are rooted in fear or insecurity. One of the essential lessons in Buddhism is this: you are not your thoughts. When you truly understand this, it can change your entire inner world. Just because a thought shows up doesn't mean it's true, and it definitely doesn't mean you have to give it your full attention. Worry feeds on these unchecked thoughts. It usually starts with a quiet question: what if something bad happens? And before you even realize it, you're caught in a spiral of imagined problems. Anxiety builds, and you feel unsafe, not because of reality, but because your mind convinced you of a story that hasn't even happened. Buddhism uses a simple image for this. The mind is like the sky, and your thoughts are like clouds. Some clouds are light and beautiful, while others are heavy and stormy, but none of them are permanent, and none of them define the sky. The sky remains vast and unchanged, no matter what clouds pass through it. In the same way, your true awareness is much deeper and calmer than the thoughts that come and go. When you start observing your thoughts instead of getting caught in them, you develop mindfulness. You begin to see thoughts for what they really are: temporary events in the mind, not solid truths. So when your mind says, "I'm not good enough," or "everything is going to collapse," you don't need to panic. You can pause, take a breath, and remind yourself, this is just a thought. It's not a fact. I don't have to believe it. That simple awareness can stop the cycle before it even begins. With practice, you create space between yourself and your thoughts. You no longer feel trapped by every fear. You begin to experience freedom, not because your mind is completely quiet, but because you no longer follow every story it tells. Once you find this inner stillness, worry loses its grip. You become steady and clear, not because life is without problems, but because your mind no longer needs to be. Lesson 4. Impermanence means your fear cannot last forever. One of the most profound and freeing teachings in Buddhism is the truth of impermanence, the understanding that everything in this life is constantly changing. Nothing remains the same. People grow, emotions shift, and situations evolve. Just like the seasons, every experience, good or bad, will pass. Yet, when fear or anxiety takes hold, it often feels permanent. It feels like it will stay forever, like it has taken over your entire reality. But the truth is, no matter how overwhelming the fear seems, it will pass. It always does. Think back to the moments in your past when you felt totally lost, anxious, or heartbroken. At the time, those feelings might have seemed unbearable. But here you are. You survived them. You made it through. And now those same experiences live only in your memory. That alone proves something powerful. Emotions, no matter how intense, are temporary. Even the deepest pain has a lifespan. Once you start seeing emotions this way, especially worry and fear, you stop identifying with them. You stop saying, "I am anxious," and instead begin to understand, "I am experiencing anxiety." And like everything else, it will pass. When you forget impermanence, you panic. You feel like things will always be this hard. But when you remember it, you create space between you and your suffering. You no longer see it as something that defines your existence, but as something that is visiting for a while and will eventually leave. This isn't just a comforting idea, it's a spiritual truth reflected in nature. The storm doesn't stay. The night always gives way to dawn. Even the heaviest emotions lighten with time. This understanding helps you approach your feelings with more patience and gentleness. You stop trying to rush your healing or force yourself to feel better. Instead, you learn to sit with your discomfort without fearing it. You let it move through you like a wave, rising, peaking, and eventually receding. You trust the process because you know with complete certainty that you are not stuck. You are simply in a temporary moment of difficulty, and that moment, like all others, is already passing. Lesson 5. Let go of control that was never your burden to carry. One of the greatest sources of worry in life comes from the illusion of control, the belief that if we just think hard enough or plan far enough, we can make everything go exactly as we want. We tell ourselves that if we just stay alert, we can prevent bad things from happening and keep everyone in perfect order. But this belief is a heavy burden to carry. No matter how hard you try, there will always be things beyond your control. Other people's choices, unexpected events, and shifting circumstances. Trying to control everything doesn't bring peace, it creates anxiety. It builds a life based on fear, not freedom. Buddhism teaches us a different way. Act with intention and wisdom, but without clinging to the outcome. This means you do your best in every situation. You show up fully and give your energy to what matters. You respond with mindfulness, but then you release the rest. Trust that the river of life will carry you where you need to go, even if the path looks different than you imagined. Letting go doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop suffering over what isn't yours to control. It's not weakness, it's a different kind of strength, the kind that comes from knowing that peace is more important than perfection. Think about how many nights you've stayed awake replaying conversations or stressing over decisions you can't undo. All that energy, all that tension, and yet nothing changed except your exhaustion. The truth is, the future is not something you can fully shape with worry. It's shaped by presence, action, and trust. When you realize that, you can begin to release your grip. You can breathe again. Letting go of control also means surrendering the idea that you must be perfect. It means accepting that mistakes will happen and plans will shift. Instead of resisting that, you make peace with it. You start trusting that life has its own intelligence. You don't need to figure everything out right now. What you need is to return to yourself and ask, am I doing my part with presence and care? If the answer is yes, then let the rest unfold. Give life room to breathe. The freedom that comes from letting go allows you to show up with more love and clarity because your energy is no longer wasted on what was never yours to begin with. Lesson 6. Speak gently to the voice inside you that worries. Almost everyone has an inner voice that worries and prepares for the worst. It often appears in quiet moments when you're alone or when the future feels uncertain. It whispers questions like, can you really handle this? This voice isn't cruel on purpose. In its own way, it believes it's protecting you. It tries to prepare you for possible pain or disappointment. But over time, that voice becomes exhausting. Instead of protecting you, it keeps you on edge and steals your joy. Buddhism teaches compassion not only toward others, but toward yourself, especially toward the parts of you that are scared. Instead of fighting this inner voice or trying to silence it with force, the more healing approach is to meet it with kindness. Think of it like comforting a frightened child. You can begin to speak to your inner self with calm reassurance. You can say, I know you're afraid. I know you're trying to keep me safe, but we are okay right now. We don't need to panic. We're just going to take one step at a time. When you shift from judgment to compassion, something powerful happens. That fearful voice no longer needs to scream to be heard. It softens. It begins to trust you. For most people, their inner voice is loud not because it's strong, but because it feels ignored. When you acknowledge it with kindness instead of anger, you create space for peace. You build a relationship with yourself based on trust, not control. This doesn't mean you let anxiety take over. It means you learn to be present with it. Like a calm teacher helping a worried student, you stop asking, "Why am I like this?" and start saying, "It's okay to feel this way, and I can still move forward." That shift is the essence of Buddhist self-compassion, meeting your inner world with mindfulness and mercy. Over time, that inner voice becomes quieter. You've become your own safe space. You've learned that you don't need to fight yourself to grow. You need to hold yourself through the growing. When you can sit beside your own fear without running, you are no longer controlled by it. You are free. Lesson 7. Joy is not a reward for a perfect life. It is a practice you can begin today. Many people live their entire lives believing that happiness is something they must earn. They tell ourselves, "I'll be happy when things calm down," or "I'll feel joy once I've fixed all the problems." But that day rarely comes because there will always be something unfinished. There will always be uncertainty and imperfections. If you wait for life to become perfect before you allow yourself to feel happiness, you will wait forever. Buddhism gently teaches that joy is not something you stumble upon by accident. It is a daily practice, a conscious return to the present moment, and a decision to embrace life as it is, rather than as you wish it to be. True joy isn't always loud or dramatic. Sometimes joy is as simple as pausing to feel the warmth of sunlight on your skin, hearing the wind in the trees, or noticing the way your chest rises and falls with each breath. These are the quiet doors through which happiness enters, not because your life is perfect, but because you finally chose to be present with it. One of the great shifts in Buddhist understanding is realizing that you don't need to fix everything in your life in order to feel peace. You don't have to keep believing that happiness belongs only to the future. You don't need every single fear to vanish before you can smile, and you don't need every scar to heal before you can laugh again. Joy lives here, in this very moment. And when you allow yourself to feel it, even while life is still messy, something powerful begins to shift. You start to take your strength back. Practicing joy is about teaching your mind to notice the good, even during difficult times. It's about choosing gratitude and being gentle with yourself. With time, this becomes more than a practice. It becomes a way of living. The worries that once felt heavy begin to fade, not because you forced them away, but because your mind has discovered a new way to focus. You start to understand that life doesn't need to be perfect to be meaningful. You realize that truest joy often doesn't come from doing, but simply from being fully awake and open to what this moment holds. When you welcome joy in this gentle way, day after day, you realize happiness was never gone. It was always here, waiting for you to pause and notice. And in that simple noticing, everything changes. You begin to live not out of fear or control, but from a place of quiet gratitude.